Hello, welcome everyone to Admiral Markets. This is a live webinar here, the 7th of October. Thank you for joining us today. This is Tuesday, and my name is Chris, and Admiral Markets is the organizer, and we together will provide you this webinar. First of all, though, before we take a look at today's goal, which is price action at pivot points, or in other words, we're going to take a look at the charts and see what interesting information there could be. We have this presentation here, this PowerPoint to show you. Disclaimer, for instance, explains that this material, this webinar, is intended for a global audience, and it may not be suitable for all webinar attendees. To find out if it is suitable for you and get other corresponding information on charting conditions and other details, visit admiralmarketsglobal.com, select your country of residence, and contact an appropriate entity. Also, the risk involved in trading foreign exchange and global financial markets is considered high risk, and it may not be suitable for all investors and traders. Please seek the advice of an independent financial advisor for more information on that. And this webinar is for informational and educational purposes only. By continuing watching this webinar, you agree with the disclaimer mentioned here, and feel free always, of course, to get a copy by sending an email to info@admiralmarkets.com. or go to admiralmarketsglobal.com. Alrighty. So price action at pivot points. Basically, of course, pivot points could be Camarilla. Pivot points could be our standard pivot points. Price action is basically candlestick patterns, like engulfing twins, for instance. And we'll be looking mostly on an hourly chart for that, for the pivot points. And we can also look at the 50-minute chart for Camarilla levels. So that will be the main focus of today. Roughly speaking, we have these steps in mind when I take a look at the market trend, opportunity, filters, trigger, and entry method using fibs, trend lines, moving averages, but also, as you know, price action and pivot points. So that will be the combination of today. But if you are, by any chance, looking at this webinar, this live trading webinar here for the first time, then please let me know, and I might be able to give you a bit more background and feedback on the things that we do. Otherwise, I usually assume that most of you have been here at least a couple of times. First of all, let's take a look at the calendar. We had a rate statement on the Aussie, stayed 2.5. Otherwise, we have production, pound news, which is a big red tagged event, and pretty much regarding red tagged event, a quiet day. Alrighty. So let's take a look at the 50-minute world. We will be looking at Camarilla, and on the hourly we'll be looking at pivot points. That's not the only thing that you see on this chart. You see two indicators at the bottom. You see also a couple of moving averages, and you see fractal indicator. And I will occasionally be adding maybe a trend line or a fib as well. And on the 50-minute world, we had a very big surge up yesterday. That was the trend of the day. But the fact that the trend of the day yesterday was up doesn't mean that the total trend is up. On the contrary, in fact, if you look at the hourly, or even better, the 4-hour, you certainly see, in fact, that the trend is down. And the trend of the day sometimes is definitely not the trend of the bigger trend. That can happen. Obviously, I like, as I've said before, to have the trend of the day aligned with the bigger trend. I think that those are more reliable. I think that those go further. I think that those, on average, are better trades. Occasionally, though, you have, indeed, good trade of the day or trend of the day that goes against the bigger trend. That happens. Yesterday is a good example. Whereas we see, for instance, here on the 4-hour chart, only a retracement, a small retracement within a huge, super huge downtrend. If we zoom into the hourly and more specifically the 15 or 30, what is just a small retracement on the daily or 4-hour is actually a pretty good move up on the 15, isn't it? So yesterday, if you traded, the trade of the day was up. What would be the trade of today? Well, to be honest, I'm still only really interested in downside at the moment, because if I look at the hourly, I see price very close to this resistance, very close to this top, and I don't like going right in front of a resistance like that. We could get a breakout. We are above the pivot points, in fact. We're above the daily. We're above the weekly. But price seems to be in a no trading zone, according to my definition. You see the hourly quite mixed up here, similar to what we had here. And look what happened then. We had the fall. We didn't have upside. That's why I'm a bit cautious with the upside. I do like the downside, though, if we get it. Time will tell if we get it. If we don't, I'm not a big fan of trading it to the upside, even though we might get a break here, and some traders might like that break. I would not be jumping in along still at that point. For me, the trend line and a horizontal resistance here about, what is it, 127, too much to trade. But if price manages to break below 125, 126, that could be different. Then I could be looking for maybe a break below L3, for instance. And the first target could be L4, which is also equal to roughly the weekly pivot point, which is now below us, unfortunately. But looking at the bigger trend on the daily that we can see here, oh, sorry about that. I just deleted by accident the chart because I'm using a drawing tool and I typed in the wrong number here. 1 second. One second, folks. I just have a telephone in the background. 1 second. Sorry about that, folks, but we're expecting a delivery, so that's why I just quickly had to pick that up. So let me continue. Yeah, just basically looking at these moving averages, you see this. You see basically the 21 being pulled away from the 89 here. So very big downtrend, right? And we're all aware of that. So, but this is a big spike. So that is also one of those things that definitely could end up in a zigzag like this. So that could be, if we do see this motion, some might want to trade that zigzag. It is possible, but as I said, I don't like it right in front of that resistance. If that 127 level breaks, it could be different. Maybe there could be that intraday long to the upside. Things could change. Maybe, for instance, above the H3, which is exactly that 127 level that I talked about. So if you see price, for instance, poking above 127 and pausing like this, going to the side above the H3, and just going like an hour or two, staying above that 127, then things change for me, because then the structure is different. We've broken above the resistance, and there could be that intraday long to the upside. So that is my thinking. It's not like I would never ever go long, but some things have to confirm, some things have to break, and I have to see certain patterns like I described here before I would do that. Otherwise, I rather, I mean, at the moment, let me say it this way, if we break below L3, things are easier lined up. Although actually, if I look at the 50-minute moving averages, they're not aligned up because they're actually flat and the 21 is above the 89. So they're not actually lined up as yet either. So let me move to another pair. Alrighty. Pound dollar is probably a bit the same thing. Basically, it is pushing up. Now, this is a downtrend too. There's a bit of a difference with the euro dollar in the sense that, well, from an Elliott wave perspective, I'm still wondering if this downside isn't corrective because it's going so choppily. Obviously, the fact that it's going choppily didn't distort any of the profits necessarily, because anyone who took the breaks of these moving averages, for instance, like this, if you were waiting for price to go below the 21 band, these were good, still good trades here at these red dots, and you still had some pips to the downside, some more than others. At the moment, price is actually trying to break to the upside. This looks more aggressive almost than the euro dollar does, so a bit more pound strength, and it looks like the trend of the day is going to be up on this pound dollar. I would still want to see how price reacts to H3 and if it could push above it. But if it does, it actually looks at the moment that it has that bullish momentum. So it looks more bullish than the euro dollar. In fact, yesterday we had a bullish upside trade as well. So I want to see how price reacts to the H3. Plus we have the news event on the pound, which makes it a bit difficult. But let's take a look one more time at the hourly. We are above the weekly and daily. And for those that were trading Asian session, maybe you traded it here around that daily pivot point. For instance, that's how you can trade the pivot points. Or maybe you took the shooting star at the weekly. Didn't go too far, but those are all options when you're looking at price action at pivot points as well, right? Like shooting stars or these smaller dojis, for instance. Those are our examples. Let's see if we can find something more for examples of the past. Let's see if we can find something for now. Dollar Swiss, see the opposite of the euro dollar often enough. Let me refresh this template. This is a good example. Prices at the weekly and daily. I didn't check the dollar Swiss this morning. It is an uptrend. Prices in the 21 band as we speak. That makes it always a bit difficult, but we are getting some rejection. We got a doji at the weekly daily pivot point confluence, and we are at the H3. So moving averages are aligned. They're bearish. Price is below them. Could be a breakout if price pushes below this 95.90, 95.94. It's still on the early side, we're still within the H3, L3 kind of range zone, but we're pretty close to the top, so it could be a breakout on the dollar Swiss here. It would be basically a confirmation trade because obviously the first reaction, the first moment price reacts to the pivot point is here. It was a few hours ago in the Asian session when we had a doji at the weekly pivot point about 5 bars ago, so 5 hours ago. This would be basically waiting for price to hit it and then waiting for a follow-through. One of the ways to trade a follow-through, the other way would be, for instance, to wait for the doji low to get broken. This is the doji, so one could wait for the low of that candle to break, or just take the shooting star as soon as the candle closes as a shooting star, take the entry right there. Or zoom in, as I show you here, zoom into lower time frames and wait for moving averages to be bearishly aligned. On a 4-hour chart, though, definitely, and even the hourly, this is still in reversal territory. So the trend is not aligned. We have basically here too, just like the euro dollar, an uptrend on the bigger picture, but the current momentum is down. Those are always a bit dangerous because of the fact that the bigger trend could swiftly push this back up. That's always the problem in a way with trading sometimes with the trend on the 15 that goes against the bigger trend. Let's see if the dollar yen is by any chance any different. This is looking bearish indeed. As I expected, we had a tough time with this upside. Although it was impulsive, looks like we could make, for instance, a contracting triangle. So I would still be careful of this zone right in here. That seems to be a potential bouncing spot. Let's put a fib on this very first down move here. I would still be cautious because it could easily make a contracting wedge like this, and price could be bouncing off this bottom soon and then respecting the top again and then bouncing off the bottom again, and could keep that pattern. So that seems a bit likely at the moment. Yeah, I wouldn't be. The dollar yen definitely on this chart is having that downside motion, but because of this potential wedge, I would be careful with the dollar yen. It is definitely bearish, but it's just too close, too much of that profit potential in the meantime to jump in here. Maybe even on the 15, it's getting a bit dubious because of the fact that there's not much space left. But it could go as low as L4, and there's still some space. It's just that if I zoom in really a lot, I don't see any particular stop loss that would make sense, maybe all the way here. And that's a pretty big risk of about 70, 60 pips, 75 pips, versus, I don't know, not much profit potential, 30, 20, 40. Seems a bit out of whack because of that. So either it makes a bit of a retracement at least here, gets a bit of a bounce, and then moves down. That could change things, but for the moment I'd rather sit on the sidelines. And we see that across the dollar, in fact, don't we? The same story. Euro dollar too, if you look at the angle of the moving average is currently flat. The Aussie is a bit better. I think if there's anything that I like, it's probably the Aussie, because the Aussie was showing some strength against the pound and euro too. Let me check. Yeah, it had a bit of pretty big spike up, but it did push through the L3. So you're seeing some Aussie strength. Look, we had the break below L3. Pretty strong, hefty upside here again after that break, but it seems like that was just a retracement for further downside as we see. So the exception, I think, is the Aussie. The question is against which pair. The pound odd is something to the downside that caught my attention this morning. The odd USD too, although this is in a downtrend too, and this is close to resistance as well here. That's why probably the pound odd is a bit better. Despite that, you can see that odd, like the pound, is in an uptrend on the 15, so you get that same situation where we're having this motion but close to resistance. So the odd USD is maybe not the best, but you see that bullish sentiment here on the Aussie. And so maybe the pound odd is better, because if you look at the 15, it is breaking. If you look at the hourly, it is in fact in the downtrend. Look, price is below the 21, again below the 21, using the 21 band as a resistance. 4 hours not yet in a downtrend though, but it is showing, I mean moving average speaking, but it is showing lower lows and lower highs. Daily chart is difficult to say. It's a strong up, it's a strong down, strong up. It could be again a strong down. I wouldn't necessarily make any conclusions on that. Certainly on the weekly chart, we see the potential of price indeed breaking out of this trend line to the upside. But despite the fact that it broke here, doesn't mean it couldn't hook back to that broken trend line. So I wouldn't necessarily exclude the fact that it could be a false breakup, first of all, or it could be a break, pull back and go. So based on that, I wouldn't necessarily not trade it to the downside. The 4 hour has a bearish 21, not yet the bearish 89, but the 21 is bearish. So I think the pound odd therefore is better, in that regard than the odd USD, due to the fact that we see that the dollar is close to a bounce spot. across the board. So pound odd, probably better. The entry could be here. In fact, could have been anywhere the last 1.5 hours. In fact, anywhere upon the break here or upon the pullback if you were lucky enough. Now, it's not a fantastic scenario on the 15, to be honest. I mean, from the higher time frame, it looks, from the hourly, it looks a bit better. In 15, it looks quite choppy. So it's maybe not the best of the best. But considering, I don't know, considering the setup of at this moment, it might be the better one with some caution, I'm saying. There's not a lot of momentum, but we are breaking below L3. Obviously, there was a lot of chop prior to that, but it could break now. It did break this trend line, hooked back already a couple of times. So I would go with it, probably a stop loss above this top, or even all the way above this top, but that is a pretty spacious stop loss, so it all depends if you like currency pairs with wider stop losses, if that's something your account can still handle. Let's take a look at the hourly. Prices below the pivots. We do have price breaking below the 21. You see, price was in the 21 and then posted a close below the 21. So some of you might have taken the swing trade here at 83.08 when the candle closed below the 21 with the stop loss above the hourly top, for instance. So it's a 15 and hourly, in fact. Or if you were using the price action at the daily pivot, the doji here maybe at the daily pivot point. Could have been another way. Then, but that was also again during the Asian session. Then actually this trade is then up quite a lot. But the 15 could be the follow-through breakout. It could be kind of like, you know how it happens when you get a break, pull back and go, or the first break often isn't as successful as the second break. This is looking like the second break, and second breaks are usually more successful. So let's take a look. Euro odd, in fact, is doing a bit better. Although the hourly is choppier. But it has already moved quite a lot. It's close to the L5, in fact. So, yeah, it's a bit difficult because it already has gone the distance today, in a way, because it's so close to L5. And it's also even more range-bound than the pound odd. So the odd yen is going sideways. So in a way, I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's the odd or the yen. We can take a look at the pound yen, therefore, instead of the pound odd, because the odd yen is going sideways, as we can see here. So there's no real winner at the moment between these two. So let's take a look at the pound yen. Pound yen, price hit the L4 already. Also downtrend. 4 hour is bearish too. This is looking bearish too, to be honest. So, and probably even looks better than the pound yen. This could be a potential short with L5 as a target. Let me just check one thing. Let me put a fib on this very first correction. I want to see where the minus 618 target is. 174. So that's the target, I would say, 174 on the downside. 174, where's that blue line? That blue line corresponds exactly with the L5. That would be the target. So that fall from current price down to 174 seems like a decent trade. It would be maybe even better than the pound odd. Price did push through L3, making lower lows and lower highs on the 15. So it would be the same like trading the L3 break. So I saw Cad Yen writing to me that the euro is pushing up. So I saw that text and then said breakup. But I mean, it's the same like taking the breakout here at L3 current price. So this looks maybe even the best one at the moment. Although the pound odd is not doing that bad either, as we can see. Sometimes these are great discounts. Fortunately, I didn't get it. I took it upon the break of L3. But yeah, if you miss sometimes a break and then you see all of a sudden price here and you see, oh, that was an L3 break, but actually it's giving you a discount. Sometimes just because, you know, one is kind of late with monitoring the chart, sometimes you get a nice discount here of about, this would have been a 40 pip discount. Those could be sweet, but the pound is falling against the odd at least, and the yen, so that's looks to confirm what we were thinking here. Pound dollar is pushing up though, so it's a lot of Aussie strength as I was thinking, and indeed it's pushing through the H3. Euro is also pushing, as Cad Yen says. Indeed, we are getting maybe that zigzag formation here. Let's take a look. If we put a fib on this first move up, we see a 38.2 fib bounce. So primary target for today would be the daily R2, the monthly pivot point, the weekly R2, and the minus 618 confluence at 127.80. But once again, I would be only trading it preferably above 127, and preferably above actually the daily R1 and the minus 272 target in that zone right there. But it is pushing up, so who knows? Indeed, could make that zigzag. So let's see. Buren was also trading the Aussie, but against the Swissy. Let's take a look. Euro dollar. Sorry if I made it too complicated here, but basically, I am neutral here with a slight preference for shorts because of the downtrend, and we're close to resistance. But if we break above 127 and 127.25, I would be open to intraday longs for today with the target of 127.80 using, for instance, the 50-minute chart and looking for price to hit and go above H3, hit, retrace, and go above H3. Because of the bigger downtrend, though, and the fact that we're close to resistance, I think that if the moving averages here get aligned, that downside is definitely good too. Below L4, for instance, bounce and then move up like this. So we'd have to see price hit the L4, probably get the moving averages bullish, have some bounce, and then take the next break. So open to both, but want to see either price break above resistance, 127 and then 127.25, or price break below support, which is 125.60. Until it does that, I would just sit on the sidelines with the euro at least. Let's take a look at other Aussie pairs and yen pairs, maybe euro yen. Let's take a look. Already hit the L5. Odd CAD, choppy, doesn't look that great. Here's odd Swissy. Yep, odd Swissy was a good one too. I didn't look at the 15-minute odd Swissy, but indeed, yeah, about 2 hours ago was a good breakout too. Here, look, we had two fractals. Maybe that was a bit on the early side still. Maybe this breakout actually was possible as well. It depends. Let me put the usual template on 1 second. But yeah, it's something in the past, so it's maybe not that important. But you can see, I think that considering the fact that price is above H3, that this breakout makes sense. It's this trend line it's this trend line break, Buren took it a few days ago. Okay, that's something different, of course. But this, on a 15-minute chart, as you can see, it makes sense too. Price reacting with the Camarilla and getting the steam needed for the break. So I like that breakout right in here at the blue dot. And probably can move it to break even because we have a fractal right in here. From a daily point of view, let's take a look. Daily point of view looks a bit mixed up here at the moment. Difficult to say. It's just moving averages are flat. Prices in the moving averages looks a bit dangerous, in fact, to me. 4-hour is an uptrend. I would probably, depending on your own trading plan, obviously, probably use these 4 fractals to move my stop loss to. Because the daily looks a bit awkward. The 4-hour is slowly pushing up. It's a crawl though. Doesn't look to have that much steam, so it could continue. It has a monthly, weekly, and a weekly R1 dose, monthly pivot. I don't know. I would probably move the stop loss just below here and see if it could break. My 2 cents on that one. Euro CAD. Let's take a look at others. I don't. Let's see any other Aussies I can look at. First of all, let's see. New Zealand looks pretty choppy. I think that's it, in fact, regarding the Aussies. All right, folks. EuroCAD, let's see, we have 15-minute chart, for instance. We see price still stuck between H3 and L3, bouncing off those levels. Let's take a quick look at the hourly. It's quite choppy as well. I think that, yeah, now I remember. I put these trend lines on this morning because basically it's on a daily it is in a downtrend. As you can see, price is below the moving averages. 21 is below the 89. But if you look at the 4-hour chart, you see the top line at a pretty decent angle, but the bottom line at a very flat angle. So what does it look like? A falling wedge. So I would not trade the Euro CAD because of that. The chart pattern looks like a corrective type. It looks like it's ending, but it's still in a downtrend. So would rather see price first box itself out of that. We need to see price actually break through that resistance, make a bull flag, and then I'm interested. This could be interesting. A big wick. Oh, pound CAD, big wick. In fact, shooting star at the daily R1 and monthly pivot point. Confluence. Yeah, that too looks like pound's weakness. So the only thing is, of course, these pound weakness ideas do have the fact that there's a disadvantage. There's a news event on the pound obviously coming, but this is a shooting star, so this is something that would meet the price action at pivot points. It is a downtrend on the hourly, even the 4-hour, even the daily, in fact, as well. Weekly not. So a bit of a retracement of that wick, maybe halfway, like 179.50. Seems like an interesting short to me, with a stop loss probably above it, to trade basically that wick. Right? The wick could get a bit of retracement. I wouldn't expect or count on double top on this chart necessarily, but 50 maybe is doable. It is a big wick, so some of it I think could get retraced. Maybe not. Maybe just flies down from here. But normally speaking, planning on some retracement in the long run, I think, does give a bit of an advantage. But it depends from case to case. I don't always do that. So that would be how I could trade that wick, for instance. Another way could be indeed to wait for a trend line like this to get broken instead. to trade it to the downside. Or not even a trend line, but of course the L3 itself. But then price would have to fall, and it would take a while. That's okay. But pound CAD looking pretty interesting. Different than the Euro CAD, looking interesting. It's all about the pound at the moment. Pound CAD, pound odd. Let me take a look at the odd CAD now, because pound CAD, pound odd, pound yen all look bearish. So let me take a look at the CAD yen and odd CAD one more time. Odd CAD is moving up at the moment, but it was in a downtrend. Now it's moving flat, or it's actually a contracting triangle at the moment, as we can see by connecting these lines. But it is a contracting triangle within a downtrend, and we're reaching, although price is moving up and is bouncing, it's basically bouncing within this triangle, and it's close to the top of that triangle. So maybe we could see a bit more CAD strength as soon as price hits this level. It's pretty soon probably. Now let me take a look at that Cad Yen. Well, no, really nothing to say about it. Looks like it's pretty even, in fact. It's just a mess here. I mean, if anything, it actually has kind of the same. It looks a bit like a contracting wedge, but maybe still a bit more bearish momentum here, obviously, on the hourly. So 15, yeah. So CAD is losing against the yen here, roughly. All right, so CAD losing, pound CAD therefore, pound CAD. Could be then, no, CAD is losing. That means we need actually, we're looking for hope my thinking was correct there, but let's see, we're looking for, yeah, the yen to be strong here, CAD yen, yeah. I think so, pound yen, yeah, the news event could really stall this breakout, unfortunately. So I have to exit and re-enter later. Let's see, Kalian, sorry about that. You said would the short under your dollar. Let's take a look. But basically, pound, I think it's good setup, but it's just the question is, will we see follow through now? Because we know the pound news event, it could just totally put things into sleeping mode. So let's see, the euro dollar. Let's see, 26.97. 26.97. I guess so. It's possible. It's a H3. It is a resistance. One thing I don't like about it is the fact that if price gets there, it's actually breaking through this trend line, which makes it more of a neutral zone to me. Yes, possible bouncing spot, but how much bouncing spot? It could just pause there for an hour and then start to break out because it already broke out of this trend line. So it's more of a zone where I am neutral. But it does have some good things, so I can see that point of view, definitely. But if it gets that high, I'm a bit already cautious about shorts because it's already pushing up a bit further than I would actually expect it to do. I think we looked, in the meantime, almost at all the pairs. If you have a particular pair in mind, let me know. Just a couple still left, such as, for instance, the dollar CAD is one of the trades I made profit off yesterday with a short in here, we were breaking the L3. We had, no, I think it was in here, in fact, somewhere in here. Price was already bearishly aligned here. We were below the L3, so that looked like a good potential. And price fell, hooked back, and then I got a good follow through to the downside. So that was good. It was counter the trend because obviously the uptrend, the trend was up. So this short here was a counter trend short on the hourly. So I traded with the trend of the day, but not the trend of the bigger time frames here. But the dollar CAD seemed to qualify good enough regarding the momentum that was in play here. I like the momentum. It was the this particular trade was based on the fact that it was below the L3 already. Unfortunately, we don't see the L3 at this point, but the L3 was, I think, right at this blue line. And price was pushing below it here. So when it did that, and we had it bearishly aligned, moving average was 89 was down, 21 is down, price at this point was below the L3, that's why I took it. And pushing through the fractal at the L3. Dollar CAD has the same story as the other dollar pairs though. One of the dangers though of trading this one to the downside is that sometimes, although the intraday trend looks like it's going down, because the bigger trend is up, it could go maybe not too far. That's, you know, one of the things you really want to be cautious of. So if it takes too long, or if you see clues that it's just not going anywhere, you know, it's nothing wrong with being a bit more aggressive in exiting like a breakout like this to the opposite direction of the bigger trend. You know, if there's, let me say it this way, if the two are aligned, the trend of the day and the bigger trend, I have a bit more patience. Like last week, I remember very clearly the Euro Yen break to the downside. Let's take that as an example. That was a classical example of a break here. I took it here. This break, I think there was a Camarillo up, I think two, break of a trend line. There was a break, pull back and go. The continuation had a break, pull back and go, right? This is break, pull back, continuation, and within the continuation we had smaller break, pull back, continuation. The downtrend on the trend on the higher time frames was down, the trend on the intraday was down. So when I took a short relatively early here, I had to live through maybe not a ton of candles, but it always seems longer when you're in the trade than when you're out of the trade. It was about 4 hours, which 3-4 hours probably, I guess, which now doesn't seem that long, but if you're in the trade, it does seem long. Or at least it seemed long for me, but I had patience with that one because it was both in downtrends. So I like the fact that it was that you know, alignment, and I had more patience, and indeed we got a good fall there. Just to give you an example where they are aligned. So I have a bit more patience with those, but that's dollar CAD. Dollar CADs though, at the moment, to go back to current events, has a bit more same situations as all these dollars. In fact, it's kind of at this bouncing spot here. It's a bit dangerous because of that. Mixed signals. You see Kiwi also at a resistance spot. Tough, very tough. Doesn't look optimal. But if it does break above the trend line H3, maybe it could be a reversal, kind of a retracement trade. Why? Because look at this downside here. Price most of the time was below the 21 band, with the exception of I don't know, just a few times. Here only a small wick. In fact, I won't even count that. Here and here. About 3 times, in fact. All the time, except those 3 times, price was below 21 band. Ever since 16th of July. Almost 3 months, it's been below the 21 band on the 4-hour chart. With the exception of 1, 2, 3, this is the 4th time. And this could be the 5th. Now what could happen here is maybe a zigzag if it pushes up again. Because if you look at this smaller zone, you see a push up above the 21 band, a dip below it again, but potential double bottom. So what can happen is something like this. After that, we don't know. So there is this gap here. You see the gap between 21 and 89 EMA here? So it's a reversal idea, definitely. But there is that gap, and sometimes that gap gets filled. It's more dangerous to trade it the first time because, as you can see, price didn't get to the 89. But now, I think there is a decent chance it could fill up that gap, especially because this is the second attempt. So let's put a line there. That's the target. And let's take a look at the hourly. You can see this would be basically that breakout trade up to that monthly pivot point, daily R2, and 89 EMA on the 4-hour chart. And on a 15, it would basically be trading the H3 up to above H4, maybe some extension to H5 for a intraday long on the Kiwi here. But definitely retracement, filling the gap retracement here on the 4-hour. See, that's how you can actually, you can use, just to go back to moving averages here for a second, you can actually use moving averages on various time frames to identify a breakout on the 15, which is an early reversal on the hourly because the moving averages are not aligned, and which is a retracement on the 4-hour, and which is, or a reversal maybe on a, well, bigger retracement on the 4-hour, which is an early retracement on the hourly. Because why an early retracement? Because price isn't even in the 21. Whereas on the 44-hour chart, price is above the 21 and going to the 89. So each time frame has its own specific spot. Daily, it's early retracement. The 4-hour, it's a bigger retracement. On the hourly, it's getting into a first kind of with the trend upside break. And the 15, it's already a with the trend breakout. So definitely no alignment here, but you can see how you can use those moving averages on different time frames to have an idea about the spot price is in and the structure it has at that point. I'm not a big fan of these, but I do, obviously if the market doesn't offer anything else, then I do tend to take them at occasion, but not as gladly as I do when the two trends are aligned. Like yesterday's dollar CAD, for instance. Last but not least, the Euro New Zealand, Pound New Zealand do not seem to be showing that much. Let me take a look again at Pound CAD. Moving up now, bouncing off this trend line already. So yeah, all in all, it doesn't seem like I have a big wish list. It's unfortunately only the few pound pairs, but pound has a news event. So otherwise, if we scan through the charts, I'm not seeing that much that I find interesting. The pound CAD, I guess, also pound yen and pound odd at the moment. By the way, from a euro-yen perspective, on a 4-hour chart, maybe something to keep an eye on. Not anything, has nothing really to do with price action and pivot points, but could be a breakout trade on a 4-hour. If you look at the 21, it's below the 89. It's a downtrend. We've had already successful breaks here as a reversal, here as a retracement, as a reversal trade, here as a first breakout trade, a second breakout trade, a third one here. Could be another one actually right now, but need to see this 4-hour candle close decently. If it's a big pin bar, if it's a big wick at the bottom, this breakout is not going anywhere. In fact, this could be a hook back, but okay. From an intraday perspective, we already hit the L5. But from a 4-hour perspective, it depends how this candle reacts to this breakout, because it is trying to challenge this trend line. It's trying to break below it. It's also bounced off the 21 band for the second time. So if this has a candle close that is decently strong, not some big wick where the candle ends somewhere right where it opened and there's just a massive wick at the bottom, obviously that doesn't look like a strong breakout. But if there's a decent breakout where the candle close is not too far away from the low, then that could be maybe an interesting euro-yen swing. Alrighty. But that's a different story. It's not really price action at pivot points, but still seems like an interesting one, so I thought I'd mention it. But if you really want a good example of price action at pivot points, then the EJ definitely had it. Yesterday, or earlier in the Asian session even, a couple of hours ago, we see shooting stars. We see dojis right at the weekly pivot point. Not one, but three. So if anyone would have traded half of that wick, like, for instance, the pound CAD, the entry could have been here with the stop loss above the weekly pivot point for about 20 pip risk maybe. And if the target is, for instance, the L5, then it was a 70 profit. So it's a good 3.5 to 1 trade. It is an example. Obviously, it doesn't always work that nicely, but it is an example of how one could look at price action as well using candlestick patterns on the hourly, at weekly, or daily pivot points, or monthly. To stick more to the theme of today. So, but these are unfortunately, so far we've just seen a kind of a couple of good examples, but those were all a few hours ago, so that can happen. Otherwise, nothing that I see right now except the pound CAD, right? That's the only one that does have a shooting star, and let's see if it reached the 50 fib already. Not yet, still hanging at the 38.2, but it looks like it can make that dash, I think. Especially with the news event coming up. But yeah, that's of course another thing. To trade during a news event or not, that's really up to you. But technically speaking, it does look like a good wick. For instance, just like this one, these wicks here on the euro-yen. Otherwise, I don't see much. We can still look at maybe some 4-hour charts if you like. Pound odd and pound yen, luckily getting a bit more downside pressure again. That's good. But of course, there's still a long way to go with this setup. But probably. Let's see. I got a question here from Brunia. If you have any questions, by all means, let me know, because I think we've gone through all of the pairs. So let me know if you have any questions. Brunia is asking, do you know if U.S. stocks will be traded with leverage now with the new platform as currencies? No, I don't know. Unfortunately, sorry about that. But if you send an email to support@animalmarkets.com, I'm sure they will find someone who can answer that. But unfortunately, I don't know about that. So I hope you wouldn't mind to write an email. Or I can always ask, but I would probably send the email to the same source. So I don't think it really helps if I do it, to be honest. Okay, cool. We can take a look at 4-hour charts, but it's going to be all the same story. It's all going to be, price fighting against the 21 and try to go to the 89. Look here, the Aussie breakout as well. If you look at the 21, price was below the 21 here. We trace back to it. And then when you break below it again, those are good moments for swing trades, like here, for instance. Got that one. Maybe even here, or here, or here, or here, but this one didn't go too far, but we never know that, of course, beforehand. But those are all cases where price basically stayed below the 21, then hit the 21, and then continued below the 21. Now, of course, this was the exception here, where price broke above the 21 for the first time. Well, actually here, slightly as well, second time, and now a third time. So we could be closing the gap between 21 and 89. What I mean is price could break above 21 and go to 89. Because this is the same like the Kiwi, could be making some zigzag like that. But it's not an easy zigzag because there's resistance right ahead of us. That's why I said that although the Aussie looks bullish, I wouldn't, against the dollar, it's probably not the best one. All right, so my battle plan for the moment is these pounds, but be careful of the news event, pound yen, pound odd. I'll have to see if I see too much struggle, I'll have to abandon the ship and maybe re-enter later. I'll keep an eye, of course, throughout the day on the euro, whether it gets to the downside or indeed to break to the upside. And this is the pound, sorry. The pound too, same thing. At the moment they're not ideally set up, same like the dollar yen, but definitely we'll keep an eye on them throughout the day, obviously, to see if there's something changes or something interesting might happen. The dollar CAD doesn't seem interesting at the moment. The euro yen swing, maybe keep an eye on that one. The 4-hour chart, as I said. So I'm definitely going to monitor them throughout the day. They don't seem set up at the moment. Other things need to happen to make me interested. But obviously, I will keep an eye on them throughout the day. Pound CAD is getting close to that 50 fib. Oh, it hit the 50 fib, in fact. No, I missed it, but by 2 pips. But don't forget, there is also a 50 number. So, yeah, it's so close. Anyhow, probably those few pips don't matter that much, but depends from trader to trader. Alrighty, folks. Well, thank you for joining. I guess there's nothing else to discuss. For me, these 3 pounds seem the most interesting, but we'll definitely keep an eye on the others throughout the day. Let's see. Tomorrow we have strategy webinar, same time, same place as today. Then we have in the evening expert opinion, and then Thursday we have the same schedule. We have the live moving average trading in the morning, and then in the evening, Nendit and I are going to take a look at the candlestick patterns in chart patterns. All right, so tomorrow and Wednesday webinar in the evening and in the morning. So, well, in the meantime, hope to see you then, of course, and wish you good trading in the meantime, and a good day as well. See you all soon. Cheers, folks.